Hey, my name's Katie. I'm the vocalist and co-songwriter of Slung. Um, Incredibly excited about this album that we have coming out called In Ways. We put a lot of heart and soul into it, so it's really, really lovely to hear that it feels as special to other people as it does to us. Yeah, we've got a couple of singles out so far. The most recent was a song called Thinking About It, and I think we have maybe two singles left before it comes out in May. And yeah, just happy to be here, really.
Nice. And Vlad.
Hey, I'm Vlad. I'm the bass player slash dad in the band. Yeah, just to echo what Katie said, really stoked that these songs we've been cooking up for ages are sneaking out, and it's amazing that people from all over the world are enjoying them, which kind of makes this otherwise horrendously expensive and absolutely ludicrous hobby that is making music, because you can't make a living out of it, a bit more justifiable.
So true. Thanks for joining us today, guys. Nice to speak with you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having
My pleasure. So, as you say, Slung are preparing to release your debut album In Ways on May the 2nd. Like, I was going to ask you how you're feeling about it, but the look on your face says it all. So, I'm going to change tact a little bit and just say, like, are you nervous? Are you excited? Are you anxious? All of the above? What are the feelings like?
I think it's kind of a mystery what's going to happen in May because the way that we've formed this band or the way this band has become what it is now, it feels so backwards a lot of the time. Like it feels like we recorded an album before we ever played live once. Like before I ever sung these songs in front of a single other person, we recorded them. So when we hear them back now after having gigged quite a lot the last year, they sound so different to how we're used to playing them, but it's almost like a relic that you discover like in the attic and you're like, wow, what's this? Like it's like a hidden gem. So through this time, I don't really even know what's going to happen or who's on the other end of the phone line when we're going to release this album, but we're sort of when the singles are coming out, we're sort of picking up a little bit of traction and people from around the world are finding us, but we're finding them at the same time. So there is this sense of like nervousness, but mostly just excitement because, as I say, we're just so thrilled to have the chance to make this thing and release it that that alone is good enough really for us. But what would be really nice is if there was a bunch of people who received it so warmly. Yeah, so nervous but really excited.
Can you tell us a bit more about the album from a musical point of view and what you're actually going for with it?
Brad, do you want to say something?
Yeah. So the album, I'm glad it became an album rather than a collection of songs, because a lot of this, like Katie said, the band started a little bit backwards. I started writing a lot of this music and sort of jamming it with other people, not to be creatively stuck. And then when the songs started coming together real nice, I thought that it'd be really great to gather some talented musicians and try a band for it. So yeah, we kind of went in and recorded the album. Then I booked us 28 shows for last year, so we figure out how to be a band. And then this year we're just like, well, I guess let's release the album. So it's not I've been in bands all my life. I've never done it this way. It feels backwards, it feels strange, and it feels exciting as well. Because it feels fresh. And yeah, it's just nice to feel excited and it's really nice to be releasing these songs and have people in Australia listen to them and cover them. Have people in America say nice things about them. Seeing somebody compare us riffs to Black Sabbath and Metal Hammer, like a magazine that I used to read as a kid. Having mentions in Kerrang. Somebody in Japan like posted about the album the other day, and just using Google Translate to kind of like figure out what they're. It's just I don't know. It feels like weird and exciting, and I'm just really glad I have this in my life because my fucking day job doesn't feel this great, to be honest with you.
Now, you've released the singles Laughter, Collider, and Thinking About It. So, are they a good sonic representation of the album as a whole, or are they just scratching the surface, you think?
I feel like the album is every song sounds completely different. Like I don't know if that's a bit of a cliche to say. There's some that are sonically in the same camp, but for example, like Collider and Thinking About It for me feel like totally different aspects of the personality of Slung. Like Collider feels quite serious, quite brooding, and like a journey, whereas Thinking About It is so casual, almost throwaway. But in like a really light-hearted way. It's just about finding a bit of humor and stuff like that. So I feel like they kind of represent the facets that we exemplify throughout the whole album. We haven't released any of, or we won't release any of the singles that have more of a country twang to it. So there's a couple of them that are quite soft, especially towards the latter end of the album, that have like this like country vibe. So I hope that that'll be a surprise for people when they, maybe they've heard Laughter and they're expecting quite a ferocious kind of punky sound, and then they're like, "What's this country song at the end?" Um,
Yeah, that's gonna
yeah,
be fun. There's bits of album that sounds like Deftones and Baroness, and there's bits of it that sound like just the lap steel takes center stage, and there's shakers, and all of a sudden it feels like it feels like we're not from England, but from that large country where Trump's fighting at the moment. So yeah,
yeah.
it's a little bit both. It's a journey, or somebody might see it as a little bit of a bipolar record, or somebody might really get it as a whole. And it's just, yeah, there's a lot of different things on it, and it's kind of cool that people have loved, bite-sized chunks of it. It'll be interesting to see what they think about it as a whole.
Yeah,
Well,
what's nice is that I imagine the people who maybe hear Laughter wouldn't like thinking about it, or, if the people are thinking of us from a certain genre based on one of the releases that we've done, my fear was that they'll be disappointed by one of the softer songs or one of the more serious ones or one of the jokey ones. But everyone seems to be receiving it very kindly and very trustingly, if that makes sense. Like they're trusting our vision, or like trusting our journey with what we're releasing, which feels like a real honor because there's no context of Slung before this. So it is each song is like, well, okay, this is a new part of their identity, which kind of reflects the members of the band as well, and our sort of influences and interests in music that are very far reaching. They've kind of distilled into this body of work that I guess we could be nervous was too spread out. But I like to think anyway, it has this level of cohesion that's like, oh, that does make sense, even though it's far reaching.
and you mentioned the song Laughter, which was the very first song that you did release. So why did you choose that song to introduce Slung to the world and represent the band, I guess?
I know, why did we? It's the most probably I don't want to say the word aggressive, but it's the most like spiky, which was kind of a gamble because none of the rest of what we do really is that spiky. Why did we
I
choose
don't know.
laughter,
I
Vlad?
think if it's a first song and you've got to grab somebody's attention, why not have a huge drum fill and then a scream? And so, whoever was doing anything, if they don't turn around to that, well, that's their fault. Like, I mean, if you're gonna try to grab somebody, you can't put out the slow country sort of style song with that starts with a lap steel intro. I was worried that they might never hear it. So yeah, I don't know. It was. I think picking singles, I think we've changed our minds about like what 6 or 7 times. Yeah, I think the latest version was just like, let's start with a bang and see what happens.
Because
Right.
we've always opened our live sets with that song as well, because it's such a, punch in the face that I think people are like, what is this? And like even the drum beat itself is so I don't know. Sometimes I can't hear it in the right timing. Like it's so complicated and complex. And then it's just, a wall of sound, a scream, and then it goes to a bit more soft, like, so yeah, it is coming out the gate with a bang and being like, okay, we're going to do something here. This is how we're going to start. Trust us, or, you're in, you're out, let's go. Yeah.
Nice. Now, lyrically, the album dives pretty deeply into some serious subjects like bullfighting to cults to the sex worker industry. So it's pretty obvious that a lot of thought and structure goes into your work too. It's not just about the music.
Yeah, it's interesting because as Vlad said, like a lot of these demos that ended up on the record, or like how we first started up being in Slung, he'd written these demos with other people, which was intended to be just like a creative project, one-on-one with these songwriters. So some of the songs when I received them, they already had lyrics, but I was never like given lyrics to them, and some of them I had to just kind of like listen to it enough times and try to work out what people were saying. And so from their lyrics, I then invented some, narratives such as Limassol, which was written by a guy called Michael from a band called Sick Joy, amazing vocalist, amazing lyricist. But he only had one, I think it was like one afternoon to like put some nonsense vocals down that didn't really make any sense, but sounded great, tonally. So what I did is I kind of took some of his keywords and then invented like a narrative and then rewrote the song, which sounded pretty much the same, but in my mind, there's like a movie version of it that I'm singing about. So half of the songs on the record were interpolations of riffing on other people's words and imagery. And then on the other half, um, I was able to maybe bring my own imagery, like movie in my mind, or base it on my own experiences. So it's funny how even though there's ones that I didn't necessarily come up with the idea for the lyrics, they still fit within this narrative, which makes me really happy. So yeah, there's some of them are words based on an idea like Class A Cherry about sex workers and Limassol being about a forgotten summer romance of eons ago. And some of them are just kind of really direct and honest. Like there's a song called Nothing Left at the very end of the album, which was the first song that I alone wrote lyrics for Slung. And that to me, I was in a stage of my life where I was really beaten down by a former band that I'd been in, and I'd lost a very close friend of mine, and it was like a creative relationship that meant a lot to me. And I was like, I don't know how to write anything else apart from this feeling. And they were just like, just say it. So the song starts with, I don't like this. This makes me nervous. I'm not good with surprises, you know? It's just so honest. It's like the only thing I have to say right now. So sorry, that was a bit of a rant, but yeah, I really felt, every word is carefully crafted and it means a hell of a lot. So yeah, thanks for noting that. That's really important. It's really
No
nice for me to hear.
worries. That was a really very good answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I believe the band has got a bit of a link to Australia as well, Vlad. You met guitarist Ali over here.
Yeah, yeah. So I used to live and study in inverted commas, but really just kind of just hang around in Byron Bay about like what 10, 12 years ago. And yeah, so at one point this English boy rolls in there and he was so drunk. This was another guy whose name is Joe Gosney, and he's played in wonderful bands like Black Peaks and Palm Reader, UK-based bands. And now he's just started a new band called Vower. He's a great friend of ours. But yeah, he rolled in there and he was really drunk, and he tried to sell me a piece of hash for 50 Australian dollars. And I was just remember thinking like, God, I'm never gonna be friends with this guy. Like he's such a dick. And then like 3 days later, we were deep in writing riffs, and he was just like, "Oh, my best friend called Ali's coming over. Could we drive over to the Brisbane airport and pick him up?" So we went there, and I picked up Ali, and we lived in tents for about 8 months, and we just made music, and that was the beginning of our friendship. It was tied by Sabbath, it was tied by riffs, and it just kind of persevered. And eventually, Ali moved back to England, and he kept just going on about this place called Brighton, and that I should come visit and I should come and check it out. And I did, and I got stuck there for 15 years. So I blame him for my time in England. I blame him for all of the riffs I've written in lower tunings, and I blame him for this band in large extent.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, you mentioned before that you recorded the album first before going out on the road. Like, I hope I get this part right. Like, you recorded it first, then you went out on the road before releasing anything, and then you started releasing music. Is that right? Like, that's
Yeah,
what
yeah,
your
yeah. That's
thought
right.
process behind that.
Well, it wasn't even necessarily like out on the road because we just didn't exist at all. Like we hadn't, no one in the world, not even our friends knew what we were doing, but we just drove like it was winter, it was the 2 weeks before Christmas, not last year, the year before. And we had enough demos to go on that we were like, let's just try and turn this into an album. And because of the time of year it was, business was a bit slow, so we managed to get a good deal on the recording studio. We're like, let's just go, let's just see. And we were still writing the songs there, like in the studio, frantically trying to come up with the lyrics or the melodies or the sections to just lock it all in because we were determined to create this album. And then we were like, right, well, what do we do with this now? Should we be a band? So us going out on the road post album was actually just an introduction to begin with. So it was playing for our friends, playing for our families, kind of a bit of a Christmas show and tell of what we did in that 2 weeks. We knew that we wanted to make this a band somehow, but yeah, it was just a funny idea because I personally, like I said in my last band, we spent years cultivating the right timeline to try and be in the right place at the right time. Didn't know any people in high places, so we're just trying to bank on good luck and talent or whatever to try and be in the right place at the right time. And we ended up waiting so long that it never really happened. Nothing really happened for us. So it kind of, the energy fizzled out, the fire fizzled out. With this, it was like, let's not take that chance. Let's do an album, let's play some gigs, hope the album goes well, and try and, trickle it on from there. So it was very strange to play a song, that we'd already committed to being our song for the rest of time for the first time. But yeah, Vlad,
Yeah,
sorry.
can I piggyback off? Can I
Yeah.
piggyback off of that? It's like there's a few. There were like out of the 10 songs, there were like five were written, and there was enough idea. So it was like because I wrote some of those songs with other people. This was like an interesting enough test drive. Going into the studio, knowing that you have enough stuff to really come out with something, but also not enough stuff that you kind of have to conjure up a little bit of creativity and magic and light a fire under your own ass and be like, we are gonna finish these. And so it becomes like a photograph and a sonic photograph of the time and a place. Like this is what it was then, and that December, a year and a bit ago. And yeah, the record was great. After that, the drummer confessed he thought like he said like I thought we were gonna walk away with just a couple of tunes recorded. I was like, fuck no, we're gonna do all 10 of these and they're gonna be great. And we're gonna do an intro. But yeah, and while we were in the studio, a friend's studio, there was invited another pal of mine who had like a little camera and was like, "Can you film a live session so I can send it to all the promoters I know in England and ask them to book us?" And before we ever released the song, I ended up of that year ended up booking us 27, 28 shows. Just of the goodwill of people that knew and promoters that knew us from other bands and yeah, we kind of showed up at the first gig and like, let's figure this out on stage. Let's negotiate this between us in front of other people and see if we can do it, see if it's fun, see if we're good. And thank fuck we were. Thank fuck it was fun. We were good enough. We figured it out.
I've actually got a funny story about the last day of us being in the studio, which is pertinent because it's about the song that we just put out called Thinking About It. And we'd reached the last day and, we still hadn't tied up that song and we knew we had to tackle it and just get some kind of final version of it down. And then there was a big storm, a tree came down and took out the power lines. So we had a full blackout in the studio and we had one day left and we hadn't finished the album. And we were like, what are the chances? Like, and it was I remember it was the 21st of December, and I was like, it's the winter solstice. This is all witchy. And obviously it wasn't, and it was literally just a storm in England. But we went into the town and we were talking about it, like, should we leave now? Should we just accept defeat? And then we got the call from Arthur, the power was back up. We went back, so we'd lost a few precious hours of the last day, and we had this one song left that it was just a jokey song and it wasn't landing and we were like, you know what? We have to just commit to the bit. We have to do this sleazy song or with the joke lyrics that we had for this amount of time. Let's just commit to it. And that's the song that ended up being Thinking About It, which was about picking up girls in the club.
Well, that's easy to do in the dark, isn't it? And that's a really interesting way to do things, guys. But a lot of bands road test their songs live before they record them, so they get the feel of them. But because you've done it backwards, like, did you find that your songs changed much once you got out and started playing them live?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, little by
absolutely.
little, little by little.
For me, like what was interesting was that in my previous band as well, like that was my only real musical experience playing gigs. It was more punky, so it was shouting. It wasn't singing. It wasn't soft singing or belting or projecting vocals. And I was actually had quite a lot of insecurities about that. And Vlad had kindly hooked me up with a vocal coach, which is a guy called Willie G, who's the former frontman of Black Peaks, who's amazing, and he really helped me. And so like when we went to the studio to sing, I was still, being quite anxious and shy to sing in front of these people that are my friends. Like, and as well, Sam Allen, who was our engineer, was really, really helpful in coaching me about it. So when we ended up going on the road, there was no room for, nervousness because the adrenaline comes in, you're on a stage, and suddenly I was able to be a bit more loud, a bit more front person, projecting my voice and stuff like that. And I actually got into a habit of maybe over singing them, like really like, yeah, like really going for it. And so when we
Yeah,
got the
bring
test,
your inner Hetfield out. Come on. Yeah.
yeah, really, really blowing my voice out every show. So that when we got the test pressings of the album and I was listening to it and I was like, who's this? this timid, shy, quiet, polite vocal. And I was like, oh, that's so funny. So I have like a real time capsule of that vulnerability, like that's on the record. And I've almost had to like relearn to sing them in more that style to like, I was so like that. And then I turned it up to 11 and I had to like now bring it back down again to sort of honor, like meet in the middle somewhere
Yeah,
between the
right.
two. So it's funny to like have
Yeah,
that timeline of my own like experience with singing chronologized like that. So
yeah, that's cool.
definitely
Very
changed.
cool. Yeah, cool. And speaking of touring, Slung head out for a UK tour to celebrate the album, starting in Winchester on May the 2nd and finishing in
Mhm.
Alton on June the 6th. What can people expect from the shows and where can they go to find out more information and get tickets?
Well, the funny thing is, because we don't do anything in a normal way, we haven't played any gigs for 4 months because Vlad, who's currently in Spain, has undergone surgery. So this entire, album campaign, we've not played any gigs or anything. So when we head out on that tour, that'll be from 4 months of being still and then immediately into a month of intense touring. So
Wow.
you'll get to see Vlad standing up, which is a novel thing for us, maybe not for people in the audience, but it's also given us time to really reflect on, the first trial run of those gigs, what Slung like live, to then have, 4 months of contemplative silence with just our album that we made a year and a half ago to listen to, and now we get to do like 2.0. So yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
I
really
haven't been walking. I've been writing so much music. I'm ready for album two now. We haven't even toured this thing. I've got riffs in the bank, man.
Nice. And where can people go to find out and get tickets? What's your web address?
slungband.com.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
It's
yeah.
on a tab, they're all under there.
Awesome, guys. All
Yeah.
right. Well, thanks very much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. That album In Ways comes out May the 2nd. And like I was saying to you guys from the top of the interview, like it's a brilliant album. It's musically diverse and it doesn't sound like anything else out there today, guys. So best of luck with it night as well.
Thank you so,
Thanks,
so
man.
much.
Hopefully see you in a show in Australia real soon.